Jaya Braja Jana Ranjana, Jaya Braja Jana Ranjana, Yashodanandana, Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari, Jaya Kunjabi Hari. Yamuna Tiravanachari, Jaya Kunjabi Hari. Yamuna Tiravanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunjabi Hari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunjabi Hari. Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunjabi Hari. The Bhagavad Gita. I guess I'll put my phone here so I can tell the time. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Question. Should I read one verse from the 12th chapter or an overview or?
Since it's the first verse, it's always nice to have an overview.
Okay. Well, first verse is an overview of the whole chapter. I mean, given in Prabhupada's purport. Okay. All right. You speak English, I assume, and you're translating over there, right? Okay. Please do interrupt me if you fall behind or for any reason I take off, leaving you behind. Okay, so I guess I'll read the... And I forgot the glasses, but we'll make it. Oh, it's on the board, so should I chant? Okay. Arjuna Vacha Evam Satata Yuktaye Bhaktastvam Paryupasate Ye Chapyaksharam Avyaktam Tesham Ke Yoga Vittamaham. I'll just read the translation. Prabhupada's translation to this is, Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect, those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? Prabhupada's purport to this, or commentary. Krishna has now explained about the personal, the impersonal, and the universal, and has described all kinds of devotees and yogis. He's Prabhupada speaking about the whole Bhagavad Gita. Generally, the transcendentalists can be divided into two classes. One is the impersonalist and the other is the personalist. The personalist devotee engages himself with all energy in the service of the Supreme Lord. The impersonalist also engages himself, not directly in the service of Krishna, but in meditation on the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested. We find in this chapter that of the different processes for realization of the Absolute Truth, Bhakti Yoga, devotional service, is the highest. If one at all desires to have the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he must take to devotional service. Those who worship the Supreme Lord directly by devotional service are called personalists. Those who engage themselves in meditation on the impersonal Brahman are called impersonalists. Arjuna is here questioning which position is better. There are different ways to realize the Absolute Truth, but Krishna indicates in this chapter that Bhakti Yoga, or devotional service to Him, is the highest of all. It is the most direct and it is the easiest means for association with the Godhead. In the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Lord explained that a living entity is not the material body, is a spiritual spark, and the Absolute Truth is the spiritual whole. In the seventh chapter, he spoke of the living entity as being part and parcel of the Supreme Whole and recommended that he transfer his attention fully to the whole. Then again, in the eighth chapter, it was said that anyone who thinks of Krishna at the time of quitting his body is at once transferred to the spiritual sky, the abode of Krishna. And at the end of the sixth chapter, the Lord clearly said that of all yogis, one who always thinks of Krishna within himself is considered the most perfect. So in practically every chapter, the conclusion has been that one should be attached to the personal form of Krishna, for that is the highest spiritual realization. Nevertheless, there are those who are not attached to the personal form of Krishna. They are so firmly detached that even in the preparation of commentaries to Bhagavad Gita, they want to distract other people from Krishna and transfer all devotion to the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. They prefer to meditate on the impersonal form of the Absolute Truth, which is beyond the reach of the senses and is not manifest. And so, factually, there are two classes of transcendentalists. Now, Arjuna is trying to settle the question of which process is easier and which of the classes is most perfect. In other words, he's clarifying his own position because he is attached to the personal form of Krishna. He's not attached to the impersonal Brahman. He wants to know whether his position is secure. The impersonal manifestation either in this material world or in the spiritual world of the Supreme Lord is a problem for meditation. Actually, one cannot perfectly conceive of the impersonal feature of the Absolute Truth. Therefore, Arjuna wants to say, quote, "What's the use of such a waste of time?" End quote. Arjuna experienced in the 11th chapter that to be attached to the personal form of Krishna is best, because he could thus understand all other forms at the same time, and there was no disturbance to his love for Krishna. This important question asked of Krishna by Arjuna will clarify the distinction between the impersonal and personal conceptions of the Absolute Truth. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Also for all of you, if my English for some reason is not understandable to you at any point, feel free to interrupt. Especially looking at the Sanskritam here, evam satata yuktaye. A very important idea is presented to us in the form of a question. And that is the idea that's, by the way, very important in the Bhagavad Gita. And the fact that it's very important in the Bhagavad Gita means that it's very important in this whole civilization. As Bhagavad Gita is sort of, it's like a unifying work. It's unifying in a sense that unifies all of the interests of this civilization in terms of transcendence, seeking transcendence. Because as you read Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, in answering to Arjuna, is weaving through all different concepts for a reason. Let me pose a question to all of you, esteemed audience. What makes one argument better than the other? Is more convincing. Okay, very good. Anything else? Deeper knowledge. Okay, more convincing, deeper knowledge. What else? If there is anything else. It's conclusive. Okay. By examples it can be conclusive. Okay, all right. I don't know if you ever had an argument with someone, and it doesn't matter who's winning or losing the argument, but if one side has a more comprehensive of an argument, in other words, that's an argument that answers more questions, the other person just capitulates. The ego might be rebelling, but the game's over. For that reason, Krishna is weaving all different concepts together. Because by putting more questions into perspective, you get a wider, clearer, and more powerful of a picture. And that's one of the reasons why Bhagavad Gita, historically speaking, within this civilization, has become the most prominent text. As Krishna addresses all of these points, puts them all together. And so, while weaving through all of these, one thing keeps popping in the Bhagavad Gita, and that is what pops today. And that is the question of connection. Yukta. Connection. It's a huge idea in the Bhagavad Gita, and it is a huge idea in this civilization. If we're going to speak in some kind of historic terms, like Arjuna asks here, who's better connected? And then he gives two examples. Person A or person B, who is better connected? Now what's interesting in Isha Upanishad begins with Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnam, etc. There's repetition of this word Purna, which means complete or whole, full, Purnam. And who is Purnam? The Supreme. Who else is Purnam? The individual soul is Purnam, complete. In other words, there's this idea that, and for this common layman psychology courses, like, I better not mention any names, but this idea is very, very popular. That you're complete, you don't need anything. You contain everything. And by the process of self-realization, you come to feel full, complete. You don't need anyone or anything to complete you. But at the same time, we also get another picture that tells us that we are incomplete. That we're incomplete, but in a specific sense. In what kind of sense are we incomplete? Intrinsically, not in our conditioned state, but in our intrinsic state. In which way could we be incomplete? Yeah, okay, we're on a good track, very good track. But that in and of itself is not enough. But you're just like a millimeter away from... Yes. Can we be more specific? Like, how's the soul described, at least in the Vaishnava tradition? A part, not a whole. We're a complete but part. And as part, we're incomplete without the whole. So, all right, you're full, but you're also incomplete. For God's sake, we cannot live without each other. Let alone without the Supreme. Like, we're so terribly incomplete. We constantly look for, I'm a sannyasi, I got friends, man, I can't imagine life without friends. That'd be a rough life. Not only friends, but look, I came here, where there are people like warm bodies, individuals. So we're terribly incomplete. But we experience our completeness, complete completeness, when we're properly connected to the Supreme and to the rest of the creation. Is everything good? Oh, incomplete. No lecture without the garland, man. And so, spiritual novices, or as Srila Prabhupada would put it, spiritual neophytes, would have a tendency to think of completeness, realization of completeness, by disassociating from other people, from other beings, etc., which is, by the way, impossible. There's always trees around you, and usually these people at least get a dog or a cat or something. something. Well, I guess I find myself in such a position, and it is sort of my service, and I cannot tell you the number of times, the great number of times I was asked questions such as, I feel attachment for my mother. How will I advance in Krishna consciousness? And I'm thinking, my God, what did you eat? Or what did you smoke? I mean, like, what kind of a being would you be if you don't felt attachment to your mother? That's like really bizarre. Yeah. But the question is, what's the nature of that attachment? That's a whole other story. So we ought to feel a lot of attachment. And the proper attachment or connection is discussed here just briefly, super briefly. That's a huge topic. Like, who's best connected? Of course, the personalist. What's the nature of the connection of an impersonalist? That's a terrible connection. That's a connection on life support. That's a disease connection. And so what's interesting, Bhagavad Gita is huge on connection. And to be properly connected is the goal of life, ultimately. Why? Because we are, although complete, we're incomplete, and we're complete only when we're properly connected to Krishna and all aspects of Krishna, such as the souls and so on. And basically that's what we're trying to do. That's Krishna consciousness, Om Tat Sat. We could close the book and go out. So in later verses, Kritya, how does it? Klesho dikatarastesham avyakta sakta chetasam. In that verse, Srila Prabhupada says that there's one more problem with impersonalism, and that is that even when you come to the personal concept of God, because of your impersonal conceptions, you have a hard time experiencing attraction to the personal conception of God. And it's a real shame, two ways, what people have done of religion. First, they presented or represented religion in horrible ways. So horrible that you can really understand the atheists. Right. And it's still going on. I mean, there's like religious traditions that have imbibed this sick concept of connection. And then the other very sorry thing in the whole story is the ego, the huge ego of the spiritually, morally ill individual, spirit soul, that when presented with concept of God as a person, the ego just says, "No, sir." But the humbling fact, and it shouldn't be humbling, it's just reality, is that let's just take a good look at ourselves. We're incomplete. I don't know, I'm not huge on watching movies just because It's so hard to find a movie that's worth watching, in all honesty. What's that movie? Taxi Driver. I mean, such a wonderful study of a sick individual in a sick society. And what's the sickness? It's the same old sickness. That is the incapacity, inability of the individual to connect in a healthy way to other individuals. I'm not going to go into, but maybe just in case if someone saw it. It's a really good study of such an individual. And so the topic that Arjuna is presenting here, connection, it's a huge topic of the Bhagavad Gita. And we are incomplete and we seek... it's interesting how in our incomplete state we seek transcendence. Do you know what's the literal meaning of the word transcendence? Yeah. So I'm here and it hurts. I want to go elsewhere. Basically, that's what's transcendence. And very often, in the name of transcendence, people are merely practicing negation of reality. But in philosophy, they say negation of red is a red concept. Can you translate that into German? I'm not sure. What does that sound like? What that sounds like? Negation of red is a very much red-oriented concept. It's all red. It's very concept. And so that's what people tend to do. They just tend to just cut it all. I want transcendence. I want to go somewhere else. You need not go anywhere else. And that's another marvel of the Bhagavad Gita. For God's sake, spoken on the battlefield. That's like, in modern terms, there would be something equivalent like Bhagavad Gita was spoken in the shopping mall, in the act of shopping. Oh, what's that? Black Friday. When's that? On a you know what Black Friday is? Oh, is it? Yeah. All the good things exported from America. Black Friday. So you need not even run away from that. And so the worst thing that a person can do is run away from the personal existence, from relationships. Sometimes we have to do that, until we get somewhat okay in our head and heart. But eventually we have to come back to it. There's no running away from it. I'll just tell you a quick story. I don't know if I ever told you this. I think it was the Amrita Swami who told me this. I can't remember, it's been a while. But I think it was the Amrita Swami that he met at the Hare Krishna temple, an interesting individual who just came for the first time to the temple. And he told him his story how he came to the temple, namely that he went to jungle somewhere, ran away from everyone and everything and hid there for decades, something like 10 plus years, was trying to meditate there, suppress his emotions, cut his connections to other beings. Then after a great many years, some dumb tourist was wandering in the wilderness, with the what do you call it, the boombox? You know what a boombox is? What do you call that in German? You know what boombox is? You see this. You don't see it anymore in America, in the States, but they used to go around with the boombox, like here, and just play music and walk down the street. So this dumb tourist, with a boombox on his shoulder. Penetrating the wilderness. Playing a stupid love song. I mean, if there is anything stupid, that's the mundane love songs. They're so unreal, so dumb. And this person couldn't hold back a tear. So all of the emotions he was trying to suppress for all these years came back by listening to a dumb, mundane love song. And he said, "This is not good. I'm doing something wrong." That's the point of the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, basically. I don't want to spoil upcoming lectures, but Krishna does discuss this in this chapter. And then he discusses also what's interesting, how it's so natural. I mean, there's nothing as natural as to love and be loved. And yet we're so damn incapable of it. Just mesmerizing. And so in the same way, we got issues when it comes to transcendence, ultimately connecting to the Supreme, and through the Supreme to all other living entities. We got issues, there are problems. And Krishna discusses, just briefly, Bhagavad Gita is a very brief text. There's only 700 verses. Bible's got, 80,000, something like that, Bible. So Bhagavad Gita is only 700. It's super small. So Krishna only briefly discusses this, and Krishna says, "Yeah, I understand you'll have a problem with that because you're in our condition, you're in a diseased state. So then do this, and if you cannot do that, do some other thing," and like that. And even that gradation is very interesting. Like ultimately, Krishna says, if you cannot work for me, then give away. It says, if you cannot love me, then think of me in a regulated manner. And if you cannot do that, then work for me. Like do some work and use those fruits of your work for me. And if you cannot do that, just give the fruits of your work to anyone. Just don't hold on to them. And then he says, then he speaks of meditation, how meditation is better than knowledge. Why? Because knowledge should produce meditation. Knowledge should result in a proper meditation. But then he says, better than knowledge and even better than meditation is giving away of the fruits of your work. Why? Because it's antithetical. You know what's antithetical? Against. Against. Yeah. It's antithetical to love, to bhakti, to devotion. The lust, the greed. So just give away, man. Learn to give. That's why one of the most prominent aspects of Grihastha Dharma is to give. Like that. Anyhow, but those who have not dealt with this seriously, and religious people are brilliant at being dumb. Like you come to the right place, to the right thing, and you're just so far away from it. Like right now we're celebrating the month of Damodara, month of Kartika. That's seriously elevated stuff. Like very, very elevated. We're speaking about love of God. And in a very intimate form. Where God is subjugated to the love of a devotee. That's like really far out. And one who has not gone through stuff discussed today and discussed in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, one who is not wrestling with this, trying to sort these things out, can hardly appreciate what's going on in this month. There's a tendency for all of it to just degrade down to a platform of sentimental stories. And that's just really a shame. I mean, if you look at Prabhupada's lectures on Radhashtami, Prabhupada speaks, Dehi nosmin yatha dehe. Feel free to find Prabhupada's lecture where he goes into Leela a whole lot. There are none. First person has to like really seriously deal with this. You come spiritually alive when you do this. It's an adventure. Sometimes nerve-wracking. Everything's better than boring. So there's 2 minutes to go. I'll stop. Om Tat Sat. Any question, perhaps? Okay, very well. On-time delivery. Is that okay? Or you wanted to say something?
Maybe also about the first line. You mentioned that the first line is the question, Om Satata Yuktaye, who is more qualified?
Connected. Who's better connected?
Connected.
Literally.
Yukta.
Yeah.
Is Arjuna just asking this question hypothetically, or is he...
What do you mean hypothetically?
Like he knows the answer already and he's just asking it? Not hypothetically,
that's hard to tell. In all honesty, that's hard to tell because Arjuna has been described as ever liberated person, as a person who's not under the influence of ignorance, and yet at the same time he's sometimes described as under the influence of ignorance for the sake of the deliverance of Bhagavad Gita. So in all honesty, I don't know. But what we do know, in one of the purports, Prabhupada says that, in purport today we read, right? That Arjuna is asking this question because he's attached to Krishna. He's not calculating, he's just like feeling, like, I feel very, very personal attraction to you, like we're best friends, buddy. So it's a very important question on the mind of Arjuna, not only philosophically, but just like very, very personally. When you're attached to something, you put negative value to everything that's antagonistic towards the thing that you feel positive value towards. That was a complex sentence. I hope you managed to navigate through it. Okay. Arti time. Grantaraj Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki.
Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Jaya Gaurachandir Arati Koshobha Jaya Gaurachandir Arati Koshobha Janavi Tatabane Jagamana Lobha Dakin Nitai Chand Amegadadara Dakin Nitai Chand Amegadadara Nikate Advaita Srinivasa Chatradara Nikate Advaita Srinivasa Chatradara Bosi Yache Gaurachand Ratna Singhasane Arati Koren Brahma Adi Devagane Arati Koren Brahma Adi Devagane Nara Hari Adi Kore Chamaratulaya Sanjaya Mukunda Vasu Koshadigaya Shankha Bache Kanta Bache Bache Karadaya Shankha Bache Kanta Bache Bache Karadaya Madhura Mridanga Bache Paramarasala Shankha Bache Kanta Bache Madhur 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 Bache Madhur Bhaje Madhur 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 Bhaje Madhur 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 Bhaje Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Bahu Koti Chandra Chini Vadana Ujvala Kala Deshe Vanamala Kore Chalamala Shiva Shukana Radha Preme Gada Gada Shiva Shukana Radha Preme Gada Gada Bhakti Vinoda Deke Gaurara Sampada Jaya Jaya Gaura Chande Radhika Shobha Jana Vitatavane Jagamana Lobha Gorangera Rotik Shobha Jagajana Mana Lobha Gaurangera Rotik Shobha Jagajana Mana Lobha Gaurangera Rotik Shobha Jagajana Mana Lobha 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Shri Nrsimha Jai Nrsimha Jaya Jaya Nrsimha Praladesha Jaya Padma Mukha Padma Bringa Pralad Lakshmi Nrsimha Bhagavan ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrata Kacharya Ashtotar Shatashi Srimad Apaya Charana Ravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrata Kacharya Ashtotar Shatathritandi Goswami Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Mathura Dham ki Jai Dwarakadam ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham ki Jai Mayapur Dham Navadipa Dhama ki Jai Shri Pralad Lakshmi Nrsimha Bhagavan ki Jai Shri Radha Madan Mohan ki Jai Shri Nitai Navadipa Jantra ki Jai Ganga Maya Munamai ki Jai Bhakti Devi Tulasi Devi ki Jai ISKCON and BBD founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Kartik Mas ki Jai Simhachalam Dham ki Jai Grandharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande Samavita Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai. All glories to the assembly devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembly devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembly devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Namaste Narasingaya. Pralada Daine. Pralada Daine. Hiranyakashipo rakshaham. Hiranyakashipo rakshaham. Shilatankanakalaye. Shilatankanakalaye. Ito Narsingha Parato Narsingo. Ito Narsingha Parato Narsingo. Yata yata yami tato Narsingha. Yata yata yami tato Narsingha. Vair Narsingha Hridaye Narsingha. Vair Narsingha Hridaye Narsingha. Nrisingha Madim Sharanam Prapadye. Nrisingha Madim Sharanam Prapadye. Tavakara Kamalabare Nakam Adhuta Singam Dalita Hiranyakashipo Tanu Bringam Kesavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare. Dalita Hiranyakashipo Tanu Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare. Kesavadrita Narahari Rupa
Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Savadrita Narahari Rupa, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Sri Nisinga, Jai Nisinga, Jaya Jaya Nisinga, Praladesha Jaya Padma, Mukha Padma Bringo, Sri Nisinga, Jai Nisinga, Jaya Jaya Nisinga, Praladesha Jaya Padma, Mukha Padma Bringo, Sri Nisinga, Jai Nisinga, Jaya Jaya Nisinga, Praladesha Jaya Padma, Mukha Padma Bringo, Sri Nisinga, Jai Nisinga, Jaya Jaya Nisinga, Praladesha Jaya Padma, Mukha Padma Bringo. Sri Sri Prahlad Lakshmana Singh Dev Bhagwan Ki Jai. Om Ugram Viram Mahavishnum Jalantam Sarvatomukam Nrisingham Vishanam Bhadram Mrityo Mrityo Namamyaham. Om Namo Bhagavate Narasinghaya Namaste Jaste Jase Avir Avir Baba Vajranaka Vajradamshra Karma Shayan Randaya Randaya Tamo Grasa Grasa Om Swaha Abhayam Abhayam Atmani Bhuishta Om Kshram Praladari Dayaladam Bhaktavidya Vidaranam Saradindu Ruchin Vande Parindra Varanam Harim. Shri Shri Pralalakshmani Singh Deva Ki Jai.
Namam Ishwaram Sachitanandarupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam Shri Radha Damodara ki jai.